Magic.
You're listening to Real Coaching Radio TV, building a positive network.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Kids Talk Foundation, a global nonprofit organization providing youth advocacy, television programming, and training services in the United States, along with comprehensive medical and educational services for the developing world, most recently in Kenya, Africa, where Kids Talk Foundation provides a feeding program, medical care, and educational services to over 1,300 young people each day. Please help our youth and place your donation. Go to www.kidstalk.org.
Welcome to Unopened Gifts, the weekly one-hour program dedicated to understanding the human potential that lies within us and the abundant life that lies before us. Inspired by the personal journey of our host, James McPartland.
And a very pleasant good afternoon at 5 o'clock Western United States time, Pacific Standard Time. I'm very happy that this is show number 2. I have a very special guest today. Before I launch in to tell you a little bit about our guest, Mario, I'd like to reinforce the purpose of this show. The reason this show has come together is I have a belief and a calling that inside of all of us is some potential that perhaps we've yet to tap, or perhaps could use some advice or some recommendations or some life experience of others to help us see some things inside of us that we may not have yet seen and we'd like to perpetuate as life goes on. And before I introduce you to Mario, I'd like to thank one of our sponsors. We have a new network sponsor, that's Christy Knight. You heard her beautiful music as the show was opening. And for those of you that can hear but like to tune in more, you can call in using Skype. You get on the Skype at realcoachingradio.net. You can call in at 303-872-0503. Send us a question, send us a comment. We'd love to have your feedback. We'd love to see you blog. We'd love to learn more about what you like on this show, what you'd like to see more, spend more time on, or perhaps less time on. But the most important time I can spend right now is with our guest, Mario DePasquale. I know Mario well enough to tell you that I like to call him Super Mario. And the reason Mario's on the show today is because he's a very special individual who's had some very significant life lessons, I think, that have provided some gifts for him that I'm going to ask him to talk a little bit about and share. For those of you who've been on the site, you see a bit of his bio, you see a photograph, and I have to tell you, looking at Mario now, sitting beside me or standing beside me in his blue shirt and crisp shirt that is and tie, Mario, you are much better looking on camera than you are in real life.
Thanks for that.
No problem. Listen, if you would, give us the Cliff Note version. Tell a little bit about your story as we go into some of the gifts that we're going to discuss. Tell a little bit about where you were brought up, where you went to school, a little bit about mom and dad. Give us a quick snapshot on the Mario DePasquale story.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad to. Well, I'm on the, as I like to say, the final approach to turning 40 here very, very shortly. So life's just getting started for me. Grew up in Chicago. I was raised a little town outside of Chicago, Naperville, Illinois. One of 5 kids, the second oldest. I have 3 sisters and a brother. I'm the second oldest of the 5, so a pretty tight-knit family. Came out to California in 1996. What originally brought me out here, I was working for a bank back in the Detroit area, and opportunity presented itself to move to sunny Southern California. And you didn't have to hit me over the head too many times to be convinced to live by the beach and all the sites here in Southern California. So almost 15 years ago, I've been out here, and I am father of 2 boys, Dominic and Drake, 6 and 4. So, a lot of times when I describe myself, I usually start off by saying I'm a father first, and then, kind of everything else after that. But they're a big part of my life. I spend a lot of time with them. I'm a single father. I'm divorced about 1.5 years now. So it's kind of in a general sense, personally at least. And then professionally, I'm in the financial services industry, commercial banking. I've been a commercial banker for almost 20 years now, coming on 20 years. Kind of a very unique niche job right now with the meltdown of the financial services industry over the last couple of years. Proud to say that I'm still gainfully employed, and I have been the whole time. So it's been a been a wild journey, but one that I'm glad I got to go through along the way.
Well, listen, thanks for the quick recap and the story of life. What I'd like to maybe explore a little bit with you is, from the outside looking in, if you will, many of us in the professional community can show up with a certain image. You happen to be a banker, and perhaps there is a stereotypical perspective on bankers, and I say that with great affection because bankers have been very important to my own personal journey, professionally and personally. But as I gotten to know you, as I've got to know many successful individuals, things aren't always as they seem, or from the outside looking in or the inside looking out. You had an incredible year professionally last year, but leading up to that, there were a few bumps in the road. And one of the things I believe is really important about the show we're doing here is to get beyond sort of the superficial things or the ways that we like to sort of maintain an image in the marketplace or in the world, and get to know the person so that the folks listening or watching can learn a little bit from your story. If you wouldn't mind, maybe talk a little bit about the bumps that have happened in the last couple of years. And I know those to be some changes professionally, some changes personally, and funny enough, you found a way to transform that pain into a power or a force for good. So can you share a little bit about that journey and what you've learned?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think journey is probably the appropriate way to describe it. Because as I think about where I sit today, it has been a odd journey. If you go back several years, I couldn't have anticipated where I was, or where I would ultimately wind up be. So as I see where I'm at today and kind of look backward, sometimes scratch my head how I got here. Kind of how I got through some bumps in the road, as you say. But going back several years, I mean, again, most of my career has been in the financial services industry. 5-6 years ago, as you know, left the friendly confines of banking to go out and try something a little different. Worked for a startup that you well know, and didn't quite pan out as I had expected. But I almost feel like my journey kind of started back in 2004. 2004, decided to again leave my job of 10 years to go try a sort of hand in the startup business. Also that same year, I got married, and my wife at the time got pregnant. So whereas a lot of people, and we sold our condo and moved into another place. So any one of those events can be life-changing. When you do all of them inside of 120 days, it makes for some interesting discussions and interesting things happen. So kind of fast forward, several years later, a second child comes along, and the startup doesn't quite pan out. So I wound up, getting back into banking and something that was much more stable. But I always felt like I really wasn't maximizing on what my potential was. I would quickly become kind of bored, kind of complacent. So looked for other things to do to really challenge myself. And so in 2007. I took a job with Merrill Lynch, and in a little bit of a different role, much more of a business development type role, really designed for me personally to go out and challenge myself in an area that I really didn't have a high level of comfort in. So I must say that's kind of an extension of when the journey really began. So 2007, sort of the latter part of 2007, if you kind of remember back, the financial system started showing some cracks. We were starting to have problems with the housing industry. And then in 2008, the wheels pretty much came off. So being with a company that was in the forefront of a lot of the things that were going on in the financial services industry, and at the same time having problems in my marriage, I feel like 2008 was the year at which the wheels kind of came off the cart, and sort of sat there scratching my head of, okay, what exactly happened? Moving forward, 2009, my ex-wife, or my wife at the time, filed for divorce, so we kind of went through that process. And then the wheels were flat, the cart was tipped over, and figuring out where do we go from here. The one thing, it's funny what you remember. I'll remember one day in particular in March of 2009. There was we got wind that in my particular division there were layoffs coming. We didn't know the extent, but we knew that it was pretty significant. So I was one of the newer members of the team, so I was concerned that I might not have a job. And this is early in 2009 when really things were pretty poor in the financial services industry. going through a divorce, kind of a lot of, not a lot of negativity. Remember one day coming home, my wife at the time was going to take one of our sons out for some event, and I was going to watch my little guy, who at the time he was probably about 2 years old. And I just remember sitting there playing with him, and he was laughing and didn't have a care in the world. And it was one of those, you sort of have those moments where you realize, you know what, you got to focus in on the here and now and what's really important. And I think from that moment on, I realized, what the most important thing in my life was my kids, and really making sure that I was there for them. And so I said, I won't worry about it. What will be, and I'll deal with it. And so as things work out, I wound up retaining my position. One of 50% of my group was cut. I was one of the ones that was retained. And ever since then, really, I feel like I've been on a positive upswing, both professionally, both personally, after we got through the divorce, and really every aspect of my life. So at a sort of a turning point. And then as I kind of got through the divorce and selling the house and moving on and starting over and kind of all that goes with it, it's funny how events occur in your life and you don't know why they're happening, but the reality is, again, when you look backwards and you realize they happen for a very specific reason. So with my job changing and with having to go out and kind of really restart my life, it was actually a great way to help manage myself through the divorce and everything else. Because the reality was I had 2 kids that were relying on me for their needs, and I had a job that it was very demanding, very stressful. But it's really what I needed at the time to kind of refocus myself and not dwell on and not get sidetracked by the events that were going on in my life. So 2000 and kind of made it through 2009, and then very early on in 2010, I was kind of sitting there looking at where I was in my life and, recognized that I got a do-over, a do-over in life. I got the chance to start over and hopefully learn from the mistakes I made in the past and trying to figure out, how would I reinvent myself? What do I want to look like in 5 years? And early January of 2010 said, one of the things I really want to do is professionally perform at a level that I've never performed at. In the country, in my division. Didn't tell anybody, kind of kept that to myself. It was something that I was going to strive for. And I was pleased to find out just about a month ago that I was indeed number 1. And it was a long uphill battle, but I somehow achieved it. Still not sure how I did it, but I did it. So just, kind of refocusing myself and trying to strive for things that I didn't think I could actually do.
Well, Mario, that is a very simplified version of a challenging and difficult story, the likes of which I'm sure there's been some experience out in the audience with, let's say, those kind of bumps and bruises in the road. We're going to go to a commercial break, and before we come back, would you think a little bit about coming back on? Tell me a little bit about the gifts you recognize inside yourself as a child, or perhaps others saw in you, parents, coaches, how you saw those gifts unfold as you've gotten older, new gifts that you've seen you have by virtue of this experience. And perhaps something I ask everybody of every walk of life and every age group is, what do you want to be when you grow up? So we'll get to all of that when we come back from commercial break. Sit tight. Thanks.
You're listening to Real Coaching Radio TV, building a positive network.
Need someone to ignite the torch of human potential in your company, group, or organization? We all need a fresh perspective from time to time, and the right speaker who possesses the vast references of experience and insight can stoke the fires in the hearts of those who long to make a significant contribution. Book the speaker, the author, and the inspired leader, James McPartland, who has been known to ignite the torch of human potential in people all around the world. Contact the JMAC Performance Group to learn more at www.jamesmcpartland.com.
Discover how to create your extraordinary life with personal coaching sessions and all the ongoing support you'll need to define your vision, realize success, and create your extraordinary life. Join our online Ask a Coach program and connect with one of our expert coaches in the areas of health, personal finance, relationships, personal growth, environment, career, and spirituality. Go to www.askacoach.us and register.
What is the human potential in your business? Do your employees, co-workers, or team members get to play to their strengths on a consistent basis? What if the people in your organization maximize their talents in aligning with the goals and objectives of your company? A Gallup poll shows that 75% of employees in U.S. companies do not use their gifts, tools, or talents in a way that inspires their everyday and overall performance. Don't let this be you or your company. Contact our team at www.jamesmcpartland.com for an evaluation on where you stand and what it would take to unlock the human potential in your business.
You're listening to Real Coaching Radio TV, building a positive network.
And welcome back to our show, Unopened Gifts. I'm James McPartland, your host, with a special guest today, Mario DePasquale. I'd like to really encourage you folks to call in or send us a Skype message. Use the Skype name Real Coaching Radio. Call the studio at 303-872-0503. Send us a comment. I'd also like to welcome Stickum, Blog TV, of course, the Real Coaching Radio TV network, Kite TV, Receiva Internet Radio, Radio Roku, and New Media Radio. Thanks, and please send some questions for our good friend Super Mario, who's sharing a lot of things that have happened in his life in a very short period of time here on our show. Mario, before we went to commercial break, I had some questions about you as a young man, the gifts you might have recognized that you had, how they unfolded later in life, and perhaps how they served you now as coming through those bumps in the road you were kind enough to share with us here before we went to break.
Well, I guess, I've always been a confident person, had, reasonably good self-esteem. I've always had a pretty good track record of traditional success. Was a good student, did well, all through high school, college, graduate school, finished top 15% typically of anything I've ever done. Professionally, early in my career, was a good performer, kind of a solid performer. Never a top performer. Kind of going back further, I've always had a strong ability to connect with people, building rapport, very empathetic to a lot of different people. Make friends easily. So there's certain things I've always done well. And as I look back, this is probably the foundation for the success I've achieved kind of later in life, if this is later in life, I guess, relatively speaking. My mom always said to me, I was always a late bloomer, late starter. I'll get things done, but oftentimes I'm not the first one to get them done. I'll kind of come into my own a little bit later on. And so that's kind of a lot of what I view as, maybe it's part of the maturing process. Maybe I went through things at the right time in my life because that's when I was ready to go through those things. I almost feel like a lot of what happens to us, it's God gives us what we can handle. And clearly He knew I could handle the last couple of years. Because as I sort of sit here today, I feel like some great challenges, but I feel like I've come through them a better person, a better father, a better son, a better employee, a better Christian, kind of all the way around a better individual than I was just 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
Well, Mario, it's interesting as I listen to you explain, sort of go backwards and then come forward, and what you pulled on, to go through the bumps that you've described. And as I say, I think you were very gentle in explaining a very painful period. For anybody who's been through divorce, and I have, it's a very difficult transition in life. I couldn't imagine doing it with young children as you have, but obviously you have found a way to use that pain as a force for good in propelling your career. I mean, last year, if I remember correctly, you were the top one in your category in the banking industry in the United States. And that's quite a turnaround from what I can only imagine being sort of on your knees, if you will, in pain, and as you say, maybe God testing to see how much you can handle. Tell me a little bit about the personal development side of things. How did you find the strength? What do you draw on internally to help you do the things that you've now been able to show that you can do in spite of the pain?
Well, it's a hard thing to kind of put your finger on or to quantify. I guess what I would say is I think I always had the right foundation. Clearly I grew up. My parents were divorced when I was about 10 years old, but my mom was a very strong influence in my life. Not that my dad was involved, but my mom was really kind of the bedrock of my family life growing up. And I think because she gave us such a strong foundation in a lot of what we did, family was first, and we were, raised Catholic, and so I had the church, and I had, strong ties to the community. So I think I always had a very strong foundation that really probably prepared me for where I was, just 2 years ago when everything was kind of crumbling around me. A lot of people probably would, in my position, probably would have kind of thrown in the towel. I mean, there's times it came close to, should I declare bankruptcy? How am I going to get through this week? How am I going to get through, next month? And I think what I found is don't worry about next week. Don't worry about next month. Worry about today. Get through today. And I think that's been the shift in the last couple of years that's gotten me where I'm at is let's worry about today. Try to make. I remember sitting about 2 years ago, right about the time, or maybe it was just before I was going through the divorce. It was probably February of 2008, or 2009. I was at the park with my kids. It was a beautiful Sunday morning, probably 65 degrees in January. Great time of year to be in Southern California. And I remember sitting there and knowing things were pretty rough at that point, thinking what am I going to do? Well, I can't. There's a lot that I can't control, but the things I can control, my attitude, my effort, the things I do, my interactions with my kids, with other people, I'm going to do the best that I can at those things and try to make every day a great day. And I think that was kind of the theme for the sort of rebirth or restart of my life a couple of years ago, which is focusing in on that day, what can you do that day, and try to make the best of that day. And at the end of the day, kind of looking. One thing I've done for years is I sort of at the end of the day kind of look back like what was good, what was not good, what can I do tomorrow. Just a short few minutes before I go to bed, just to try and reflect on the day's activities. So. I feel like it's just grinding it out. The reality is you show up every day. If somebody asks me, well, why were you successful professionally? I'd say I show up every day and I grind it out. I do what needs to be done. And while I'm here, I'm focused as I can be. And I just grind it out every day. And so I think a lot of it's, digging down deep into strength. I guess I never knew I really had. And you never know you have it until you're called upon and you're tested to see how you respond. I mean, you hear stories about that all the time where people have tragedies. Maybe they're caught somewhere and they've got to survive in the wilderness for a couple of days, or somebody in a car accident, or whatever the case may be, and they find that they have personal strength they never knew that they had. So I think maybe I was fortunate to be able to kind of tap into that. Because that's what I had to do.
Well, what I take from that, Mario, is something I've seen and I've witnessed and I've learned from people who have lives of abundance, and that's measured a number of ways, whether it's health, family, finance, relationships, amazing experiences in terms of contribution and giving back. What I have learned is something you spoke of there, and that is you've got to show up every day and give it all you got. And I think I've also recognized, and you probably personify that, is you have to expect in the roles of life you play as you want to climb is it's a never-ending series of obstacles to overcome. I call it a bit like the game whack-a-mole at the fair. Those moles just keep popping. Maybe you blow through a few hammers, but they just keep coming. And there's interesting backdrop to this station now that we do our show from with Steve Toth, and a perspective of consciousness described quite often. And one of the things that's interesting in a journey like yours is there comes a point in time, and perhaps the time you have now is where you're more conscious of things, or you're quite conscious of things going on, certainly the things that serve you, certainly the things that have been a catalyst to your positive outcomes. As you look back over the last couple of years, were there things you could say, I was not paying attention to this, I wasn't really conscious of things that you can now see you couldn't see at the moment?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, kind of backpedal a little bit, something you said about, the abundance and, the gifts you have. I think in 2009, so 2 years ago, as my, everything was kind of falling apart around me, I guess I never realized how, how much I really did have, and the, life experiences and the traveling and being able to do a lot. We lived in a beautiful house, and surrounded by a lot of great people and friends, and but when you're, put it to you this way, I think everything in life boils down to you got to have a strong foundation. I fortunately, as a child, I had a great foundation. Even though my parents were divorced, I had the church, I had my family, I had a community, I had friends. I had a great foundation. I think that's one of those things. I never, as a kid, was never, not that drugs weren't around where I grew up, but I was really never tempted by turning to drugs because I think I had such a strong foundation. Looking at my marriage, I don't think I was ever on a strong foundation. So when things started going awry, we just never had a strong foundation. Financially, I'd say the same thing. In 2009, when the financial service industry was imploding, the company I was working for was pretty much on its way going out of business. Personally, financially, I did not have a strong foundation. And so it's interesting, both my marriage and my professional and personal life were on such poor foundations that when you get those external factors, they topple you right over. And so, kind of again thinking about where things went awry, or it's just, there was clearly, the foundations were never there. And that's one thing I think over the last 2 years I've really tried to create a stronger foundation. And so I think that's kind of my underlying theme of a lot of this is you can't build a skyscraper on sand. You got to have a great foundation that extends very deeply.
Great and wise words. And I'd also like to let our audience know, those that can see you and those that can hear you, is as articulate and strong as you come across and well dressed as you are, that you are wearing a clip-on tie. I was going to let that be our secret. And before we go to a commercial break, which we're getting ready to do here, I do have a couple more things for you to think about during the commercial. And if you look back over some periods of time here of areas in time that you would like to relive again, the experiences were amazing and what was amazing about them, and things that you would like another shot at doing over. And we're going to talk about reliving some experience and doing over when we come back from commercial. Thanks.
You're listening to Real Coaching Radio TV, building a positive network.
What is the human potential in your business? Do your employees, co-workers, or team members get to play to their strengths on a consistent basis? What if the people in your organization maximize their talents in aligning with the goals and objectives of your company? A Gallup poll shows that 75% of employees in U.S. companies do not use their gifts, tools, or talents in a way that inspires their everyday and overall performance. Don't let this be you or your company. Contact our team at www.jamesmcpartland.com for an evaluation on where you stand and what it would take to unlock the human potential in your business.
Discover how to create your extraordinary life with personal coaching sessions and all the ongoing support you'll need to define your vision, realize success, and create your extraordinary life. Join our online Ask a Coach program and connect with one of our expert coaches in the areas of health, personal finance, relationships, personal growth, environment, career, and spirituality. Go to www.askacoach.us and register.
Need someone to ignite the torch of human potential in your company, group, or organization? We all need a fresh perspective from time to time, and the right speaker who possesses the vast references of experience and insight can stoke the fires in the hearts of those who long to make a significant contribution. Book the speaker, the author, and the inspired leader, James McPartland, who has been known to ignite the torch of human potential in people all around the world. Contact the JMAC Performance Group to learn more at www.jamesmcpartland.com.
You're listening to Real Coaching Radio TV, building a positive network.
Well, everybody, welcome back to the show Unopened Gifts and my special guest, Merrill DePasquale. I would like to ask those of you who have questions, and I have one or two that have come in, to feel free to please call the studio, 303-872-0503, or you can get us on Skype using the name Real Coaching Radio, or you can get us on the blog. So please, we'd love to have your questions. One of them that came through on commercial break, as I come back to those specific questions I asked you, Mario, was perhaps it had to do with my observations about your fine dress and the tie, and it had to do with humor. And I think I'll just touch on the fact that my own experience with yourself and with others who have overcome things and have done great things is there's an ability to laugh at oneself and to have a good time, because life is going to be pretty tough on a daily basis. And one thing I admire about you is you do have a terrific sense of humor. At least I'm hoping you do, by virtue of some of the things I'm going to be continuing to ask you here. But I think that's probably played a bigger part than we've had a chance to talk about. And having a chance to get a few belly laughs is good for all of us. So I compliment you on your ability to appreciate my humor as I appreciate yours.
Are you wearing pants today, by the way?
Yes, but they're tearaways. Just in case we're having an interview here, but you never know if a basketball game could break out. I want to be ready. So let's get back to your favorite subject, and that would be you. We were talking a little bit about life and life experiences and things that you might have a chance to relive, perhaps great experiences, or if there was something you'd speak about that if you had the chance to do it over, you'd really like another crack at it. Can you share what the commercial break brought to mind?
Yeah, I'd say I've always going back probably 15, 20 years ago, I sort of adopted a mindset of I don't ever want to have regrets. And so a lot of the decisions that, not where I'm going to go to lunch today, but the decisions that are of a more important nature, I like to look out 5 years and say, the decision I'm sitting here today, how will I feel about that in 5 years? So, for example, 15 years ago, I had the opportunity to leave the Midwest, come to Southern California, where I basically knew nobody. Was going to start my life over, and I had some doubts about it. Again, didn't know anybody, didn't really know if I was going to fit in, didn't know how I was going to go. But I really sat and thought, well, how would I feel in 5 years from now? Would I look back and say, well, what if? And if the answer to that is, if I get the feeling that what if is going to be unanswered and it's going to be kind of gnawing at me, it tells me I need to look at that decision more closely, and I don't want to ever have the what if. So for the most part, I don't really have any regrets in the decisions I've made, the directions I've gone. And you could say, well, you went through a divorce, it was a painful experience, what's your takeaway from that? Kind of the same thing, before I got married, although I had some doubts, I had a huge what if, and I felt the what if was a greater risk to me personally than going through it to see what happened. And so again, I don't regret that. Do not regret getting married. I don't really regret any decisions in my life. Would I go and do things differently? Probably some things a little bit differently. The one thing I look at my life professionally, personally, everything else, the one thing I probably would do differently is I would have, coming out of college, I probably would have gone into the military and spent some time serving our country. As I look back, it's the one thing that I really wish again served kind of a greater part of things. But other than that, no regrets. I hope to learn from the experiences of the last, really 20 years of my life and do better and maximize my potential more. The other thing too, I've always had something we had asked earlier. I've always had the ability to listen to what people say, retain it, pull it back later, and really kind of evaluate how that might impact my life. So, I look at things that my father has done in his life, and life lessons people have told me, and I kind of find a place to store them, and then I'm lucky enough to be able to retain them, pull them back, and reflect upon them. So a lot of times, that there's that. The other day I was reading about wisdom, and why is it that you have to live through something to make you wise? I think a wise person also is somebody that sees what somebody else goes through and says, okay, well, I've learned from that. You don't necessarily need to go through all those and make those mistakes yourself. So, yeah, no, I don't think I would go back and really do anything different per se, because I don't really regret, have many regrets this part of my life so far.
Mario, you shared some great insights there. I must also tell you that the noise, maybe it's your computer, it's either you're back in that room full of crickets, or the pigeons are coming out of their cages and they're chipping away at your knees. You turn your volume down just a little bit. I don't want anybody to miss the great wisdom you're sharing. Plus, we get to get a close-up view of you as you lean forward. I think that's much better. Thank you very much. So I think that's better. So that's not part of humor, because I was being serious about that, aside from you sitting in the room with the crickets and the pigeons. Talk to me a little bit about something different. And that's something I believe we all deal with on a daily basis, and we all deal with in the great game of life. It's fear. And often we are trapped into doing things or making decisions or moving forward based on our belief about obstacles, what other people might think, or our own belief in our own capabilities to do some things. Now, in your own life, you've shared, ways of overcoming fears, and I suspect out in the banking industry, you've dealt with a lot of people who've done some significant things. They too would have had to overcome fears. How do you fight through fear? Do you face fear? What are you afraid of? Talk a little bit about that.
Spiders, they frighten me. No, yeah, you're right. I think we all have fears, and I guess achieve what I know I'm capable of achieving. You can't live your life of fear. I guess I just try and again, it comes back to the same thing of kind of grinding everything out every day and showing up and doing what you need to do. I guess maybe I'm less conscious of fear. I'm a lot of times, other than fear of heights, and I do have a severe fear of heights. I think I just kind of try and tune as much as I can out and just go on with my my day.
So that explains why you don't fly on airplanes, and that everywhere you go is by car. Of course, I didn't think people should know that. But tell me this: when each of us, you've got young boys and I've got young boys, and I think what's interesting, maybe it plays into the discussion about fear. When we're little, there's so many things we want to be. You probably ask your sons, like I could ask mine, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it could be Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, baseball player, astronaut, president. And my own personal experience and my observations of people I've been around is, as we get older and we have to color between the lines, we become a little less ambitious, and maybe we settle, and we can then look for societal reinforcement of how we're supposed to behave. And a lot of the music still plays inside of us. When my parents passed away, they died at young ages. My father was 57, my mother was 61. And for a long time, I thought it had to do with poor health, nutrition, cigarette smoking, alcohol. And while those were strong contributing factors to their demise, I think what took their lives early was they died of a broken heart. They died with the music inside. And part of the motivation for the show, writing the book, and trying to use a platform to go out and touch people is to encourage them to fight through the fear, reach inside, use the gifts that they've been given by God or whatever they believe their source to be, and just make it happen. Because one of the worst things I think could happen to any of us is to look back and not so much regret what we've done, but perhaps regret what we didn't have the courage to do. And you say you're staring down the barrel of 40, and that's not even the they say, as you say, life begins at 40. That's not even the halfway mark, but yet there's a long way to go. So as you look out into the future, many chapters to write, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I wish I knew. I think I have to preface, or I guess I know the age of my boys, 6 and 4. So obviously I'm a very active dad, and I will continue to be. So obviously I've got I think I figured I've got 18 more years before they're out of college and I kick them out of the house. So if for the next 18 years I continue to do what I do, I'm probably okay with that, because I don't want to not be there for my boys and be a meaningful part of them growing up and being there for them. That being said, there are things that I still have a lot of ambition, and not that I don't enjoy what I do, but if the opportunity does present itself to me that I can take on a larger role, or find something that's more entrepreneurial, I might look at doing something else, so long as it doesn't impact me negatively in being involved with my kids' lives. I think that's the great thing. I'm sort of surprised that I still do have as much ambition as I do at this point. And I guess I think that perhaps a lot of that's just the last couple of years, and kind of having to dig down deep and having some success in the last few years, especially last year, has kind of reignited my own personal fire. And it said, you can go out and you can set goals, which, by the way, I've always set goals. I mean, it's funny. Today since 1994, I've set goals for myself every year. I've written them down, and I've kind of tried to be very specific about what I do. But because I did so well last year, it made me think, well, maybe I'm not setting my goals lofty enough. And so one of the things I'm looking at right now is, I set out to do something last year. I did it. I accomplished it. Still don't know how I did it, but I did it. And so, for me, it's a time to reevaluate, and knowing that I'm capable of more, how do I tap into the gifts that God did give me, and how do I really utilize them more? So I feel like right now I'm kind of on a path of, I don't want to call it self-discovery, but a path of how do I do more with the gifts that God has given me? Because clearly, we all have gifts, and if you're lucky enough, you figure out what they are. And if you're really lucky, you're able to then utilize them to your potential. And that's kind of where I feel like that's sort of the next phase of my life, is continue to identify those gifts, and then what do I do with them?
Well, Mario, we're going to go again to a commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about those particular gifts. I'm going to ask you about people that you're associated with, or you would aspire to be associated with, who you believe have found a way to maximize or use more of their gifts than perhaps others? What you think the format is, or the formula is, to find a way to use what you've got, or to open those gifts and give them away as fast as you can before the clock expires at the end of our life. So we'll get to that after commercial break. Sit tight. Thanks.
You're listening to Real Coaching Radio TV, building a positive network.
Need someone to ignite the torch of human potential in your company, group, or organization? We all need a fresh perspective from time to time, and the right speaker who possesses the vast references of experience and insight can stoke the fires in the hearts of those who long to make a significant contribution. Book the speaker, the author, and the inspired leader, James McPartland, who has been known to ignite the torch of human potential in people all around the world. Contact the JMAC Performance Group to learn more at www.jamesmcpartland.com.
Discover how to create your extraordinary life with personal coaching sessions and all the ongoing support you'll need to define your vision, realize success, and create your extraordinary life. Join our online Ask a Coach program and connect with one of our expert coaches in the areas of health, personal finance, relationships, personal growth, environment, career, and spirituality. Go to www.askacoach.us and register.
What is the human potential in your business? Do your employees, co-workers, or team members get to play to their strengths on a consistent basis? What if the people in your organization maximize their talents in aligning with the goals and objectives of your company? A Gallup poll shows that 75% of employees in U.S. companies do not use their gifts, tools, or talents in a way that inspires their everyday and overall performance. Don't let this be you or your company. Contact our team at www.jamesmcpartland.com for an evaluation on where you stand and what it would take to unlock the human potential in your business.
You're listening to Real Coaching Radio TV, building a positive network.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the live broadcast, the second show of our big show called Unopened Gifts. And our special guest, Merrill DePasquale. You know, as I mentioned in sharing how folks could get messages to us, it's clear, Mario, you may have one or two either fans or friends or perhaps foes out there listening today, because I've been asked a question as to if you, how you're able to spend this much time with me knowing that tonight is your ballroom dancing lesson, or I don't know if you're a teacher, or if in fact you were enrolling, was it Ballroom Dancing with the Stars, as somebody wrote here. So and I think you have somebody out there who admires your Fred Astaire-like skills. I should have spoken about them earlier. That aside, before you comment on it, let me tell you this. You know, we talked a little bit about gifts here, and the thing that I found pretty interesting about life and meeting people who have found fulfillment, and that comes in a number of different ways, is having the courage to use what they believe they've been gifted to use. I asked you about fears. One of my great fears is when I come to the end of my days, and I've already decided I'm going to live to 102. I've had the documentation created. The board of directors has approved it, and so you know I'm halfway, or soon to be halfway, down that path. But one great fear I has at the end of that 102nd year, I'm laying on a large table. I'm still in body. Lights go on. I look down, chin to my chest. I look around, I see big angel wings. And the questions are, I gave you these gifts. What were the gifts? And what did you do with them? And one of my great fears and motivations to even take the attempt here to try to touch people through this show is that I wouldn't have had the courage to open the gifts and give them away because I wanted to play it safe. And I imagine you, like any of us, probably have something knocking on our heart from time to time. Maybe we don't know it's a gift. But if you could speak to something that maybe knocks on yours, or maybe as a parallel question, could you describe individuals that you've come across that you think, here's somebody who maybe is competing with themselves, not anybody else, to see how fast they could get to the gifts and make a difference in the lives of other people? Do you see that in your own life? Do you see that in folks that you spend time with in your business?
I guess perhaps it maybe manifests itself, in different ways. For me, and I would probably echo what you've said, which is, I guess that would be a fear of mine too, that, when it comes time for that final scorecard in life, and looking back and how you've spent your life, and as somebody said to me a few years ago, you can't hitch a U-Haul to heaven. So the pursuit of material and money, in and of itself, you can't take it with you. So obviously we do things for reasons, but when the final scorecard comes, and if I look back and realize that I didn't really do enough, or I don't have anything tangible that I feel like I left the world a better place, left it behind me, I probably would look back disappointed on who I was as an individual, as a father, as a man. So I guess that's part of my framework of as I continue to the next chapter of my life is what do I do? How do I make sure that I do more with those gifts, and again continue to identify those gifts. Oftentimes I find that I may draw I would say encouragement, I may draw strength from somebody that I may not even know. I may be sitting in church, or maybe listening or read about somebody that's done something pretty incredible, and you think, here's somebody that may not be all that different than who I am, but they've found a way to dig in deeper within themselves, or just do more with what they've got to do something for the greater good. So nobody specifically comes to mind that I say, I want to kind of emulate them, which is, I guess I've never really had a mentor, which is something that I've sort of looked to. Will you be my mentor, by the way? But that I think that might be something for me that as I who would I model myself after, or who can I draw from? I think I probably need to take a closer look, because I'm sure there's a lot of great examples of people locally, and that might be something that I need to spend some time doing.
Questions come in for you, Mario, and it goes like this. Ask Mario to finish this statement. Money is blank.
Green.
Come on, Kermit, you can do better than that.
What's that phrase that money is not the root of all evil, it's the pursuit of money. That is. I think it's, to me, economic enrichment is really a means to an end. It's not the end to itself. So I work hard, and I've put myself through graduate school. I've consistently tried to be a top performer in the last several years to obviously make more and be more successful. But for me, it's hopefully will allow me not only to do more with my kids and be influential in that regard, but what I really like to do is get to a point where I've got more disposable income that I can do more good with. Whether it's philanthropic interests, and that actually is sort of another thing I'm actively looking at right now, is doing more from a philanthropic standpoint, getting more involved with two areas in particular. Children and the homeless are two, to me, causes that I really am becoming much more passionate about, and looking for ways to help make those situations better. And so that's kind of another theme that I have in the next several years is, what can I do personally and professionally to help in those particular areas.
So the further comment has come in, Mario, as you speak, somebody referring to the banking industry here. It says, from the perspective of the banking industry, the biggest mistake a client can make is mismanagement. And at the same time, banks are mismanaged. How does one reconcile that? Now you can take the fifth, drink the fifth, or avoid that question. You probably answered it quite a bit, but feel free to comment.
It's hard to dispute the comment like that. I mean, if you look at what we've gone through in the last couple of years, and you see the amount of shareholder value that's been destroyed by the events of the last couple of years. But I don't know. I think it's a much more complex problem than that. I mean, you can trace what we've gone through in the last 2 years. You know, its roots go back probably 20 years, and I think the final check came due. And you know, and I would say the same thing from, you know, take a macro look at our government. You know, look at what's going on right now, and look at, you know, we've got record deficits in the national debt. You know, the checks coming due, and you and I and all of our listeners and our children and our grandchildren are going to have to help, you know, pay that debt. And so I think the problem is bigger than just, you know, the banks. I think we've got systemic issues that, you know, we need to address.
I was kind of hoping you'd take personal responsibility here.
Only for this, my clip-on tie and my very bright blue shirt today.
And the crickets.
Yeah.
Merrill, in the last few minutes here we have before the show ends, if you were to leave or impart any message or any gift to the viewers or listeners about your gifts or having the courage to open gifts and use those gifts, what would you share?
Yeah, I would say use this experience. You know, we didn't necessarily touch on it, but, you know, for me, one of the things that I'm interested, or I think one of the gifts that's been instilled in me, is my public speaking skills. You know, they say that people are more fearful of speaking in public than they are of dying. So, you know, I don't have that fear. I enjoy public speaking. I enjoy doing it. I feel like that's something that I can help other people with, or maybe it's organizations. So this opportunity came up for you and I to do this, and I'd say you've got to keep your mind open for not only experiences, people around you, and if there's a chance that you can help somebody, and, you know, you never know how that might enrich you. So I think you have to take the viewfinder through which you look. You know, sometimes I think you have to get away from, you know, what's in it for me, and saying, well, how can I help other people? And I sort of thinking more about that. If I look at my success in the last couple of years, it's been more about, well, how can I help others? You know, and I think as a byproduct, by helping others, I've achieved success that I didn't realize I would achieve by just changing kind of my viewfinder, if you will. So perhaps that's my parting shot is, you know, rather than as we say around here, with them, what's in it for me? You know, what can I do to help you is something that I will continue to do, and I think from this experience, you know, that's going to be emphasis of, you know, what can I do to help others and help you.
Well, Murray, you've given us the great gift of time, the stories that you shared about your own personal journey, and as I said to you earlier, you softened what was, I'm sure, a very difficult set of situations or circumstances, but you found a way to transform those into forces for good. And I think the gift you've given the listeners and the audience is to look at life as it exists for them, and to say, you know, I can overcome, because it is about perseverance and overcoming and staying consistent and focusing on what you're really gifted at. And you've been very helpful to articulate that message today. I want to thank you for being my guest on show number 2 of Unopened Gifts.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, my friend, we're going to sign off. Everybody tune in next week, Thursday, 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, for our next guest, a gift of a guest on Open Gifts. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Today's podcast is brought to you by ObesityHotline.com, the silent killer, providing support and encouragement in the prevention of this rising epidemic. Featuring the Body by Vi Challenge. Is there a quick answer to the question? Go to www.obesityhotline.com. You're listening to Real Coaching Radio TV, building a positive network.
If I am a child of a loving creator, then maybe I am like the people who made her. And I'll probably grow up to be like them later. Maybe love is all there is. There's gotta be more than what we're displaying. There's gotta be more than the things we keep saying. Could it be us that we keep on failing?